Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by the movie Hangout. Just finished watching Stranger Things Season 3, Episode 3, titled The Case of the Missing Lifeguard. And I have to say, this season, it's just amazing how the Dufflin brothers have been able to really develop all these different storylines, and we can kind of see how they're going to converge, especially at the end of this episode. In this episode, especially, the whole Russian subplot and the whole conspiracy theory really amps up. And I don't know, it's just Steve and Dustin, those two guys in the mall, kill it. It is so much fun to watch these guys. So let's just dive into it. Great article here by Vulture and written by Keith Phipps. Does a really good job, so I'm just going to briefly go over it. So far this season has been a series of realizations that trouble has once again come to Hawkins. Tell you what, for a small town, there's a lot that happens there. That's crazy. We'll seem to know it from the start, but first episode found everyone around him blissfully unaware that the Upside Down was about to make another play for the bucolic Indiana town. All these happen in Indiana for some reason. It's crazy. The second episode saw characters grow wary of their surroundings, a few at a time. Nancy and Jonathan with the rats, Joyce with the magnets, and the Scoops Ahoy gang of Steve, Dustin, and Robin with the Russian messages. Elle's personal drama aside, Elle and Max have remained apart from the turmoil and the good vibes of the previous episode's trip to the mall. At first, look like they'll extend into the case of the missing lifeguard, which opens up with them having a sleepover, thinking about Ralph Macchio. Love Ralph Macchio. Love the Karate Kid. Complaining about boys and doing a little astral projecting that confirms their suspicions that boys are mostly gross and stupid. Meanwhile, newsflash. Meanwhile, Mike and Lucas decide that girls are just a different species than men. Newsflash. Understanding between the sexes has had some serious breakdown in Hawkins. Yeah, little teen battle of the sexes there, so that's funny. Cool thing about the astral projection, it shows Elle, and it's like blackness everywhere, and she's walking on water. And this is something that the person who wrote this article noticed as well. It's almost like the Dufflin brothers, they borrow a lot of the best qualities from movies and TV shows in the past, and so in the astral projection scenes, especially, it reminds me of a sci-fi film, horror film, starring Scarlett Johansson titled Under the Skin. And if you ever check that out, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The astral projection brings them to Billy because we're trying to figure out, like, what's Billy doing? He's gone missing. Who might be doing something gross, as Max warns Elle, probably with a chick or something. And that turns out to be true, just not in the way that Max meant. Elle's not sure exactly what she sees, and so she and Max become yet another set of amateur sleuths, following clues that lead them to believe Billy might be responsible for the disappearance of a local lifeguard named Heather. Remember, in the previous episode, Billy saw a version of himself in the Upside Down telling him to build. So we're seeing now what he's actually building. They find a bloody whistle, which is a tip-off. It's a matter of when, not if, all these investigations will converge. But will everyone involved be able to put their personal differences aside? Take Lucas, Mike, and Will, and Dustin, but he's elsewhere this episode, who used to be perfectly happy, hanging out in the basement, playing Dungeons and Dragons, and not thinking about girls. That changed for the others, but not for Will, who desperately tries to turn back the clock via an intense Dungeon and Dragon session in which he dons a full Dungeon Master costume. It doesn't go well, leading Will to deliver an impassioned speech about how it was so much cooler when before everyone else got interested in girls. From there, Will heads to the Castle Byers. So this was a really, really touching moment, I feel, in this episode, because it's something that every guy kind of goes through, when he's transitioning from being a boy to a young man. All your friends, including yourself, start to be interested in girls. So with that, your behavior changes. You try to get more involved in sports or other things so the girls will like you more, you know. So then you kind of lose like that tight knit male group, you know, you had when you were a little kid. And so this is something that Will is going through right now, and it's really difficult because of his other friends have girlfriends, he doesn't. And there's one part in particular when he's in his little makeshift castle in his backyard. He picks up a picture, an old picture from the previous season of him with all of his friends dressed up as Ghostbusters for Halloween and all the fun they had. And there's like a flashback to all the things that he did with his friends, and now it's no longer going to be possible because life has changed. And he tears it up, and I don't know. It was an emotional moment. I felt, you know, because it's something that I think we all can relate to. It's a little bit heavy-handed, really. Stranger Things has made Will the supernaturally spooky outsider for 2 seasons now, never giving him much of a chance to emerge as a character. It makes sense that he'd feel his friends and life in general are passing him by, but neither his confrontation with Mike nor his flashback sequence dramatizes that with much imagination. Joyce and Hopper, who's still hungover after driving home drunk. This guy is like an alcoholic, I swear. Not really, but he kind of is. Home drunk from his failed date, which is bad behavior for anybody, but especially for a police chief, seriously. He's like the worst police chief ever. He's great, but he's also pretty bad because, I mean, the behavior he gets away with is just ridiculous. Find a way to put their differences aside after arguing about why she'd go see her kid's science teacher when she should have been enjoying a fancy Italian dinner with him. He's skeptical about her magnet talk, but ends up tagging along after delivering an obnoxious speech about moving on, and thankfully she never hears, having drifted out of earshot in her desire to figure out what the heck is going on. Their investigation takes them back to Hawkins' lab, where they find not much really. When they go back to the lab, though, that Russian henchman from previous episodes, he's there, and he ends up literally beating the crap out of Hopper. Joyce has some troubling flashbacks to Bob's death by the demon dog. That was sad because Bob was an awesome character played by Sean Ashton, child 80s icon. All the cavities have been filled, Hopper tells her. What she doesn't notice, someone's watching them. That's the Russian henchman. They get into a big fight. Back at the Hawkins post, Nancy continues her fight against deeply entrenched sexism as she tries to persuade the editors that she's onto something. No one buys it, not even the editor-in-chief, Tom, who has a habit of striking a sympathetic pose that looks like he admires her moxie before joining the crowd and jeering her. Undaunted, Nancy continues her pursuit with Jonathan in tow, only to find poor, sweet Mrs. Driscoll chowing down on some fertilizer. This was so disgusting. So basically, they go back to the little old lady's house where they originally found in episode 2 the diseased rat that was in a cage, you know, that exploded, and then its like guts slithered away like it was still alive. Well, that thing that slithered away obviously attached itself somehow to this little old lady. Now she's like possessed by that creature from the upside down. And so they go into her house. They are like, hey, Mrs. Driscoll, you here? And then they couldn't find her anywhere. They hear something in the basement. They go down and they see her crouched over something. And then she turns and she's like stuffing fertilizer in her mouth. It's disgusting. It was really creepy though. And I have to say, so far, episodes 1, 2, and 3, the creepiness level is 2 times more than seasons 1 and 2. And I love it. There's a little bit of jump scares. I don't know, it's really, really good. Meanwhile, at the Starcourt Mall, which that mall is freaking awesome, Dustin tries to push Steve toward realizing Robin's actually pretty cool, even if she is in drama club. Not that Robin seems to care about anyone's approval. She's locked into cracking the cryptic Russian message only to find that what it's all about. It's all actually about the Starcourt Mall. But that can't be. But given the Hawkins has already served as an unlikely hotbed of supernatural activity, why shouldn't it be a hotbed of espionage? She may tell Lucas's sister Erica that Steve's only doing spycraft, but she's much better suited to the pursuit and less likely to mistake an innocent jazzercise instructor for a Russian spy. Then, as the episode draws to a close, they run into real Russian spies who seem to be using Starcourt as a headquarters for whatever nefarious plans they have going. That's bad. Even worse, the Russians spot them. Episode ends as it begins with Elle and Max. Only this time they've put teen magazines aside and found Heather, the missing lifeguard. And she's fine, apparently enjoying a nice dinner with her father, the same Tom who edits the Hawkins Post. It's a small town. And that's what's really cool about this is like you really see like how in a small town kind of like people are linked together, you know? And her mother, Janet, they're waiting out the storm and baking cookies, just having a nice time. Except there's one problem. Billy and Heather are their evil doppelganger versions of the characters we know, or possessed by the Upside Down. I don't know. I just thought this episode, this season just keeps getting better and better. Number one, the whole Russian subplot is not ridiculous. You know, it's totally plausible. You know, at least they make it seem that way. It's like, okay, I could see how this could really work. And the code that they intercept and how they figure it out, I think these kids could probably actually do it. And how they're spying on the Russians. And I don't know. I feel like it's not silly at all. You know, it actually adds to the story. And then you add in the supernatural element, which is already there. And there's more going on. Once again, there's more going on in this season than I think the previous other two. And there's like newer layers to the story, which I really, really appreciate. Season 2 is great, but I feel like it was kind of like more of the same of season 1 a little bit. But this one, they definitely add a lot more great things about it. And by the way, if you want to check out the ice cream place that Steve works at, it's actually Baskin Robbins. So if you want to go to I'm pretty sure it's Baskin Robbins. It's either Dairy Queen or Baskin Robbins. Right now, they actually are selling an exclusive POP of Steve in his ice cream uniform, and it'll be a collectible. So if you guys want to go check that out, I would definitely do it. I might go buy one, but that's kind of the thing they're doing right now. So that's pretty cool. This episode, I would give this one a 3.5. I felt like they could have done maybe a little bit more, and just with like I would have liked to have seen a little bit more with the Russians, you know, and to learn a little bit more about how that's connected to the Upside Down, because obviously the Russians are really, really interested in it. But 3.5, 4, you know, goes back and forth. Really, really great episode. Billy is creepy as hell. Really, really creepy. The actor that plays him does a fantastic job between, you know, being his doppelganger, can't say that right, doppelganger, and being the real Billy. You don't know when it's the real guy and when he's being controlled by the Upside Down. So that was fantastic. And then, you know, Steve and Dustin, those guys just work. They could honestly do a whole like the spin-off series of those two, you know, just solving crimes in the mall. You know, I think that would be really cool. But anyways, hope you enjoyed this, and I'm going to be watching the other episodes and doing some recaps. If you want to get future rants, reviews, or original content, click subscribe. Later.